all, just to introduce myself and to say, first of all, I'm going to sign internationally because we've got so many interpreters here. So I'm going to try to cut them all out and go internationally. And also, I'm not using any PowerPoint. It's one-way sign language straight to you. Okay, so just to let you know. All happy? Better luck. My name is Mark, and I work at Remark. Which is R-E-M-A-R-K. We sign Remark. Remark is predominantly a TV and media company, but we also have a training division where we teach BSL. Where's our lady who's learning to sign? Here she is. She's one of our students at Remark. Remark have a very, very wide client base, and we have 55 full-time permanent employees. As you saw demonstrated earlier, the BSL multimedia guides, we create those. And we're staffed predominantly by BSL users who work in our scripting and our filming and offices as well. I'm from a deaf family. My parents are both deaf, as are my grandparents, and several more generations above that. When I was a young boy, I rarely went to museums. And to be honest, it's because I would get there and all this wonderful piece of art or information I couldn't really access. But one place I did go was the Imperial War Museum. And the reason for that was it was so visual. I can remember going with my grandparents. My grandparents said, "Where's the tanks?" And we'd be like, "Oh, they're over here." You know, and we didn't actually know the story or the history behind them. We just made it up. You know, I couldn't tell you the name of the aeroplane I saw suspended from the ceiling, but I know it's there. And then as I was growing up, about 10 years ago, what we actually saw was the start of interpreter tours at museums. So I actually knew what the historical meaning behind works of art were, you know. And a lot of the people before that would be, "Oh, it's not really accessible to me, I don't really know what's going on." And then finally we had the interpreters. But the problem we had is it was always at a set time. And I would be at work and I'd be like, "I've got to get to this interpreter performance at 7 o'clock and make this mad dash across London." You know, and also with the interpreter, it's like a tour. It's like you are sheep, you know, herded along. It's kind of you're a sheep, you follow your shepherd. You all go in one place at one time, can't look at what you want. You know, and also what we've had before is interpreters that are booked for a job and no deaf people arrive for the tour, but they're paid anyway. So that's the problem with the interpreter tour. So I thought, hold on, there's got to be a better solution. And then, you know, 10 years ago, as you know, technology, our computers were, shall we say, heavy? Not an easy portable device. You know, 5 years ago they started to be better. Now they're amazing. 10 years' time you're looking at holographic signing, you know, a kind of Star Trek beam me up thing. But 5 years ago, you know, we started to see problems being solved, you know. And I started to see people who would go, you know, "Oh, this is me on the player, this is you, this is the interpreter." But with this handheld device, the problem we've got is signing's very flat. It's kind of like one way, and how do we do that? And we were talking about the tape. Where's Marcus going? Lovely glasses. Where's Marcus? Yeah. Really, we have to say a massive thank you to Marcus because his commitment to the deaf community, and he was really paramount to pushing through the pioneering multimedia tour. You know, and translation is really important, and what we did there was we recruited deaf people to sign as well. And we also recruited English experts, people who are bilingual in both English and BSL. Because, you know, if you get a deaf person who signs beautifully but has no actual access to the meaning of the language, what's the point? So what we had is someone who combined both, someone who was fully bilingual. And what's also really important is we got copies of all of the artworks, the images. You know, via email we were sent these images so we could see it. And we could say, "Oh no, you don't sign it like that, you sign it like this." You know, that has its own limitations because obviously you can't really tell size from an image. So we'd actually go and do a walkthrough at a museum and we'd turn up and go, "Oh, actually, this piece of work is massive." you know, and some of them actually are like the size of a postage stamp, so that has to be reflected in your translation as well. So we would go, it's this big by this big, you know, and that's really important to reflect what the piece of work is in your translation. You know, deaf people, as you know, are very visual, so we need that. And Remark's policies would only recruit BSL native sign language users as our presenters. You know, interpreters, you do a good job. Yeah. You better say that or she'll stop voicing. You know, but deaf people, you know our language, it's our storytelling capabilities, really. You know, the Queen in her portraits at Buckingham Palace, very regal. You know, one picture, she's on a horse, and it's this eye contact, and there's this man making this painting. You know, and deaf people reflect that story in their translation. So our horseman would be kind of silent, very regal, you know. And then we would say, looking down at the man who was, you know, doing whatever he was doing, you know. And the interpreter actually just processes information. Like what these guys are kind of doing here, they're not very beautiful. Whereas I'm bouncing all over the place. So it's a different style of translation, and it's really important that deaf people are involved in that translation process. And also, as you know, what's really important is the filming of things. At Remark, my earliest job was working in TV. And you know what we call in-vision signing, the little person in the bottom corner of the TV programme. What's paramount to that is getting the lighting right. You know, hearing people who work in TV, what you actually have is a 3-light setup. You have one at the front, one at the side, and one at the other side. You know, so if you have a hearing crew to film a signer, what actually happens is they light it incorrectly. The deaf person has to be lit differently. So I was involved working with the BBC. You guys know what the BBC is? It's worldwide. I worked as a cameraman for the BBC. It was one of my first jobs. And I was responsible of talking to a deaf user group and saying, look, this isn't working for lighting, we have to light correctly. So we did a lot of testing, because if you front light, so the light directly onto the body, you get a shadow, which is exactly what happens on our bodies. So it's like having 4 hands. You know, the same as if we sign like it's like watching sign language on, should we say, hallucinogenic drugs. You know, you get this kind of pattern here, there, and everywhere. So we reformed the lighting system. So we now, instead of having 3-light system, we have a 4-light system. But each of the lights are softer, very similar to the one above my head here. And what they do is they light you properly, but they don't give you a shadow on the body. So the BSL is accessible and clear. And also filming the camera. You know, the camera you've got there, that's all right. You know, for us, it's huge. You know, TV cameras are really expensive. It's about £40,000 for an entry-level camera. You know, and for a camera that makes you look so beautiful and this wonderful skin and, you know, captures the BSL properly, you have to have that. You can't use a handheld camera, and I've seen a lot of times that people have recorded sign language translation on mobile phones and sent that in as, you know, providing deaf access, and it isn't. You know, so what we actually did with this lighting is, with a beautiful camera and strong light and soft lighting, what you get is kind of a 3D translation. So our in-vision doesn't look flat, you kind of stand out from that, and that's really important for access to information. You know, and we've said before, as Marcus said, BSL as a language is very different from English-based. You know, and I've often said to Rebecca, what does this mean? And she comes out, she goes, no, yeah, I'm not really sure. And I'm like, oh, come on, English is your language. If you don't know it, how am I meant to know it? And it's also, English is a very vague language. You can get around what you actually want to say by using pretty words. You know, BSL, we can't. You know, you could say in English language, for example, large, big, you know. I mean the same, but in BSL, how large is large? How big is big? You know, we have to be very visual in our translation. So what we did and what we do is recruit deaf people and hearing people, like Rebecca, you know, and language experts and those who are experienced in the subject we're translating. So if it's art, and people who work in the profession of art, come in, we sit down and we talk about it and we say, does this mean this? Does this mean that? What does this actually mean? And when we've all got a firm grasp on the understanding, that's when we can begin the translation process. You can't translate without background information. And that's really important. So we've worked in various museums and galleries as well. And one of the problems that I can see, I mean, as you know, Europe is in economic recession at the moment. Money is tight, shall we say. You know, Spain, France, you know, translation of languages. And then we want to add BSL on as well. And we thought what would happen is you would have Spanish translations or audio translations and then a BSL translation as a separate product. But what we want to do is actually combine that as a process. You know, and what we've seen is a lot of people trying to do things on the cheap. So getting a deaf person and going, can you just sign this, we'll record it on handheld device and send it off, you know. And what happens is, deaf people turn up at galleries or museums for access and they'll go, but this translation is meaningless. And we'll say, it's not a great translation. I think, look, we have limited funding, we haven't got budgets for this. We've had to do it in a cost-effective way. So that's the response we're getting at the moment. And the web. A problem with the web. I can see more and more use of videos on websites, you know, and deaf people are signing translations on websites, and the video is actually shot like this. So you'll get a deaf person on the middle of a website beside just like that. Is that web accessibility? Is that meant to be translation? You know, and we contact companies and go, what were you doing? And they go, well, we've got a professional company. And they're like, well, who are they? And it's a human company who don't know the specific language requirements and shots of filming a deaf person. And it's kind of a bit like, come on, give me a break. Could you not see the half a page of headroom that you had above them when you were filming? So, the future, I'm terribly excited. But the future, we all know that handheld devices were expensive. I mean, how many do you have, Mark? How many devices do you actually have?
Do you mean the devices that contain the BSL content? We have 5.
5. So at the tape we have 5 devices. And you hand them out, they're gone. You know, and I know Buckingham Palace and St Paul Buckingham Palace and St Paul both invested in 50 players, but that's incredibly expensive. You know, and the biggest cost involved with creating handheld devices like this is the programming. But you've all got smartphones, haven't you? You know, iPhones, Blackberries, you know, the Samsung Galaxy. You know, they're amazing. You know, 5 years ago, if you wanted to take a mobile phone out with you, it's about the same size as you are. But now they're tiny. And you know the new QR technology? That's what we sign in Britain, QR, like the little barcode there. Have you seen this? That looks like a little barcode next to products. What you can actually do is take your smartphone, use your QR scanning, scan it, and have access to the BSL translation. So what we see, and if you have seen random deaf people going around the museum taking pictures of barcodes, what they do is they then sit on the train or they go home wherever they have a Wi-Fi connection and they can have access to the artwork information and BSL. It's super cheap to do. You can't lose your device because it's your mobile phone. You know, it saves companies an awful lot of money, and we think at Remark that that's how to become the future of BSL translation. And what we need to do is really continue to work with museums. And what's happened to me in the past is that we've had these fantastic relationships, and then the member of staff has left, and the new person's like, oh, BSL, what for? You know, why do we need this? And that's what we find a really big problem. It's the building of the relations, and then that person leaves, and their needs then don't stretch as far as their community. Really. You know, there's lots of jobs for hearing people. There's not many jobs for deaf people. You know, BSL translation is so specialist. We employ deaf people, and it's really important that we keep that employment going. And thank you so much for watching me today. Questions? Anybody?
Stunned everyone into silence. John's just saying everything was very clear.
Are you all frightened of me? Christian, Thomas?
Thomas as well. Very clear.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, what do you do when you get a museum that gets in touch with you? Let's say, well, I want 50 videos in BSL, and I want this script to be 50 videos in BSL. How do you work? How do you exchange with the museum? What's your method?
50 videos of BSL, right?
Yeah. Why?
Well, my international stint as a presenter is over. I'm back to BSL, so here's your taxes. I'll bring you some Crystal Martin Lane who went up to and then came back. Well, Remark have a division called Remark Translation, run by the lovely Rebecca here. I added the word lovely, Remark's explanation. So what we do is we provide VRS translation services as well. You know, what we do is when we've received client liaison, we get a request. Rebecca creates a quote, and what she does is always, you go and speak to your client, you see what their budget are. Sometimes some of our clients have a lovely budget. Sometimes they have virtually nothing. So what Rebecca will do is go and see them and advise on accessibility and see, really, to make sure they get as much as they can for the least amount of money. We work, as I said, we do the script adaptation and work with them, and then we film. We have an in-house HD studio at Remark, so we film all our translation there. We work with BSL monitors and linguist experts. We have freelance presenters like Deepa, and what we're really lucky is to have everybody under one roof, so we're incredibly cost effective. At Remark, we also have focus groups monthly. So we invite different deaf people from across all of the community to come in, and we show them what we've been doing and say, look, what do you think?